Okay, it's a little after 9 o'clock. It looks like I inherited the leading of the meeting again today, excuse me. So this is the 20th December meeting of the Buzzards Bay Action Committee, and call this meeting to order. We have one set of minutes. Everybody had a chance to look at the minutes. Is there any comments? Okay, then entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we have a guest speaker today. Newton Dieter from the EPA is going to make us all smart on the MS4.
I don't know about that, but thank you. I was going to do a PowerPoint presentation, but as I talked to Anna, it's like I feel like PowerPoint is basically like a challenge to get you to not fall asleep. So I decided not to do a PowerPoint.
Okay.
I'm just going to talk for like 5 minutes or so about like where we are now in the MS4 world, where we're going in the next year, and then I really just want to hear from you guys questions and answers and comments and just things you're confused about, and let's just like chat about like what you're going to be doing for the next year and what you are confused about, and we can start to clear that up. Everybody got their notice of intent that's in this room. That's great. Everybody made the deadline. There's only 3 of us that review these things, so we've got 330 NOIs to review from between Massachusetts and New Hampshire, so it's going slow. If you haven't heard from us, that means we haven't reviewed your NOI yet. Usually you'll get something back from one of the reviewers asking for clarity on something. There's only been like 2 or 3 that I've asked for nothing, so usually there's just asked for clarity back and forth. How that's going to go is you're going to get an email being like, hi, I'm reviewing your NOI. Attached is some things you need clarity on, and it'll be broken down into a section of the NOI, and you can just clarify that by responding via that email. You don't have to send in any new stuff.
So how long do you think that process is going to take?
I'm hoping we get everybody done within a month. Like we've gotten, I don't know, 80 or so done so far. They're starting to go faster as we get used to it. But it's just every like waking moment. Now we've got Thelma, my boss, is starting to do them too, so we got another person. So I'm hoping within a month everybody will hear from us. After that, like back and forth email process, we post all of the NOIs on the web. We post them on the web for 30 days so people can comment on your NOI. But what they're really commenting on is if your NOI is complete enough that you're meeting permit conditions. You can't really you're not making your own permit like last year, like the 2003 permit. They're really commenting on if your NOI is complete or not. So we have been getting comments on everybody that we've posted on the website. So if you go on our website right now, the Massachusetts MS4 website, there's a link to where you can see all the NOIs to comment on them. And we've been getting comments on every single NOI that we've been putting up there.
Who do you get comments from?
We're getting comments from CLF every time.
From who?
Conservation Law Foundation. They're a third-party interest group that will.
They are all lawyer comments, and so far we have not had to have any of the towns respond. We have been able to respond for the towns. Their comments and the responses should be up next week for the ones we've already got. So we're responding for the towns to CLF because it's all very like Clean Water Act lawyery, law talkery, and we've been able to take care of it without getting you guys involved. And I think that will continue to be the case. I have a feeling that we're going to get a comment on every single NOI that we put up there, and I have a feeling that we'll be responding in a very similar fashion. There's other people anybody can comment, we just haven't gotten any other comments in except for the CLF comments on everybody's.
What would you say the CLF's objective is with the comments?
They just hate the permit in general. It's
they like change.
all of it. Yeah.
More restrictive.
Much, much, much more restrictive than the way it ended up. I mean, so there's also a lawsuit going on for the MS4 permit that continues to go on. CLF is part of that, along with other National Home Builders Association, Massachusetts Coalition for Water Resources, Center for Regulatory Reasonableness out down in DC, CRWA, Town of Franklin, Town of Lowell. It's all a big lawsuit that's all consolidated down in the DC court. That continues to go on. We are in mediation for that. I can't really talk any more about that than what that is. That is an ongoing thing. If that ends up, I just don't know what that's gonna end up like, but that's just an ongoing thing as well. CLF's involved in that, and it's like their comments are very similar to, the complaint they made on the permit and why they sued on the permit. So they're just reiterating their same complaints. So I think that's why we're dealing with them in-house. But anyway, this shouldn't be a big deal. Everybody should get their authorization letter. We've already authorized 19 people, and their authorization letters will be up on the web next week as well. And so, this is going. We're authorizing. It's just slow. We are the government. Everything is slow.
Newton, could you explain what the authorization letter is all about?
So the authorization letter is just, it's going to be very simple. It's just a one-pager. Actually, no, they're up on the web now, so you can go see the people that have submitted their NOIs, have been reviewed, and got their authorization letter. And it's just saying yep, your NOI has been deemed complete. You are now authorized under the 2016 permit. Go. Okay. But in practical terms, everybody should be doing what the permit has in there before you get the authorization letter, assuming you're going to be authorized, because everything is predicated off of the effective date of the permit, which was July 1. So the first due date is July 1 of next year, which is the annual report and the stormwater management plan. That's when that's due. But so you should continue to work as if you have authorization, and your authorization letter will come eventually. That's how I've been telling people, because everything's predicated off of that. It's nothing in the permit is predicated off of your authorization date. It's just a thing that we need to submit to you, and you need to just keep that authorization letter in your stormwater management plan where that goes. So hopefully within the next couple months, everybody here has their authorization letter from us. But in the meantime, it's beginning to create your stormwater management plan. That's the biggest due thing for year one. I've got a handout for year one requirements up here, and your stormwater management plan and your illicit discharge investigation plan need to be started, and your outfall ranking procedures need to be in place year one. So that's really where you should be starting. The rest of it is kind of business as usual. You're still cleaning your catch basins, you're still sweeping your streets, you're still doing winter road maintenance, and you need to start inspecting your treatment structures. But all of that, all these plans need to be updated at year one. So from now until year one, when you do this big stormwater management plan update, you are just implementing the plan that you've had in place over the past year. And until you update that plan, that's when all the new requirements kick in. So right now, you are just filling out that stormwater management plan. How are you gonna meet permit requirements? Who's responsible for them? What BMPs am I using? It's basically taking the NOI and really putting meat on the bones. When you say these are the BMPs I'm gonna do, then you start really thinking more about those BMPs, who's doing it, what departments need to be responsible, when I'm doing them, creating standard operating procedures over the course of the next 2 years to add to your stormwater management plan for all the different pieces of the permit. On our website as well, we have a new tools website. It's right on the Massachusetts MS4 website. You can click through the tools. There's a template for the stormwater management plan. You don't have to use it, but it's there. There's templates to every standard operating procedure you need to add to that stormwater management plan over the next 2 years. So that's standard operating procedures for illicit detection, catch basin cleaning, street sweeping, winter road maintenance. It's all putting everything in writing and putting it all in one place. And that's you're gonna notice that there's a lot more paper in this permit, and like, that's for a reason. We want things to be written down in one place so people can follow it and we know what everybody's doing. I'll get to you in a second. There's been a lot of gaps that we've found when we go out and do like little mini audits or sit with towns, just saying like, well, you know, I had all this, but you know, my DPW director left, so I don't know where anything is anymore, and I don't know what our operating procedures are. I don't know when all these catch bases were cleaned. He just did it whenever they thought it was good to do. And so we're trying to make sure that everything's written down so there is a transfer of knowledge. Things don't get lost. You don't understand how, like, stormwater management just becomes this more ingrained thing in town. And that's really a big part of this permit, is making stormwater management more at the forefront of not only DPW, but many other town responsibilities. And part of that is having a really good stormwater management plan. Yeah.
Just in terms of these operation and maintenance plans that you're expecting, you know, it's really difficult for us to know how detailed you're expecting to be. You know, the DPW's, the winter road maintenance, you know, we'll meet the DEP, snow removal policy, we'll meet the, what is it, street safes or a street safe program, whatever. But is there a template for some of these that we can see where the, you know, appropriate sort of level of information and what you're looking for?
Yeah, so on that website, on the tools website, there is some templates that we've created for certain things that we couldn't find templates for. And then other coalitions around the state, like Central Massachusetts being one of them, Pioneer Valley has a bunch as well. They've been creating standard operating procedures and templates based on the permit conditions for a couple years now for their communities to use, and they're freely open for anybody to use. So we actually link directly to them on our website, being like, hey, you know, this IDD plan is really good, and it's like, it follows the permit. We've looked at it, it follows the permit. It's actually thoughtful and well laid out. You can download it and put your own information into it and manipulate it and make it your own and add it to your stormwater management plan. You don't have to recreate it. And there's links to every single standard operating procedure that you need to do over the next 2 years to be part of your stormwater management plan on our website right now. And you can just start going.
Okay.
They're there.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Some of the DPW yards in the Buzzards Bay area are outside the MS4. So do they actually need an O&M for the yard itself, or they store the salt and the sand?
They don't. Not under this permit. I mean, like, as a matter of like good stormwater management plan, you probably should. You know, good stormwater stewardship in your town. Probably yes, but as for this permit, the answer is no. You don't have to have it for this permit. Yeah, I mean, let's open up to questions. I don't have really too much else besides trying to give you a general sense of where things are. And what you should be focusing on. It's really the next year is really focusing on updating that stormwater management plan. And the template online is, it's pretty easy to use, but it'll give you a better idea of, like, you know, the level of detail that we're looking for. We're gonna try to come out with a how-to guide to provide even more detail about that, but that's not gonna be done until we finish NOI review. So that's a couple months out. But that's kind of where we hope you're focusing in the first year.
So I'm sure you've been talking about this a lot. The waters of the U.S. definition, it makes a huge difference to us in terms of mapping our stormwater, not so much the outfalls, but our whole system. You know, what's jurisdictional and what's not. So I know you're currently defining the definition or redefining what a waters of the U.S. is. It takes out about 50% of the wetlands, and now if that definition goes into place for this permit, and then in 2 years that definition changes, or, I mean, how are we even dealing with that?
So, like, I'm hoping that in here, this region, especially down here, I don't know how much it's going to change. Like stormwater swales were never waters of the U.S. under this program. We never treated them as such. We treated that as part of your system. So you have discharges. So you have road pipes discharging into a swale. That swale's just part of your system. It's not we would never consider that a water of the U.S. even before this rule.
But bordering vegetative wetlands that have, you know, drainage patterns which form a nexus and then intermittent streams form, I mean, you know, if you're going inland in your towns, it can be quite a bit of area that I can make a strong case that it's not jurisdictional under the, under the certain definition. 2 months ago, I was mapping all of them because there was a nexus.
Yep, and like, we don't know how that rule is gonna end up, it's just proposed right now, and I don't know where it's gonna end. The Clean Water Act will always be around a water of the US, not a water of the state. It has to be a water of the US for this permitting program. And I guess it's gonna be the level of effort you wanna put in to trying to make the case for each and every outfall, that it's, whether it's jurisdictional or not.
But if I make the case under this definition, am I gonna, in 3 years, are you gonna come back and say that my mapping's not?
If the water of the US rule changes again,
Yep.
which it could change at any time.
And we make it more difficult than possible.
But you need to do what's best for your town. That's kind of how I answer all of these. It's like, you know, there are things you can control and there are things you can't. And you need to make the best decisions for your town, and deal with whatever else happens later. And, you know, like, you can get bogged down in hypotheticals and details, but really what matters is what's best for you and what you want to do for your town. And if you want to try to, like, fit something into that box, then, I mean, that's things you can do. Or you're just going to take the more holistic approach because you want to. I mean, most towns in Massachusetts, I think, do this program town-wide just because that's what they want to do. And it just becomes an easier thing for them to do instead of trying to parse out different areas. But not everybody. Some people actually really do, and it makes a big difference for them, and they want to really parse out where they do this program. And that's okay too, and that's both of them are totally fine options. But it's really what makes the most sense for you and what you want to do.
You make a very good point in, you know, doing what is best for our town, and I certainly laud the issue of, you know, finally, after decades, you know, jumping into stormwater management and improving, you know, the discharge issue. But as a town administrator, I look at the end objective, and that is, I'm gonna have to, correct some stormwater discharges that are on our, you know, prioritized list. Then it comes to question under the limitations of Proposition 2.5, with my revenues increasing 2.5% per year, along with all the other budgetary items, how do I pay for it?
I can't tell you how to pay for this program. There's 15 now stormwater enterprise funds around the state. There's more that have just added an extra fund onto their sewer bill. There's another, you can start your own stormwater enterprise fund that's not subject to Prop 2.5. Some towns have done that. It's up to you and how, like, again, it's gonna be what's best for your town and how you want to pay for this program. But this program does make you take stormwater more seriously than maybe you have in the past. And that's just the reality of it. I mean, like, we're in Massachusetts, where the single biggest issue we have in water quality is stormwater. And that triggered a regulatory response, and like, here we are. And I can't tell you how to pay for it, that's gonna be up to you. But there's a lot of different options out there.
Along those same lines, since this is a new program, and in this coming year, it's all about the stormwater management plan, can EPA provide any guidance to towns about what might be an appropriate expenditure to accomplish these early on tasks, depending on the size of the town? I think some towns don't know, well, first off, some towns are probably deciding, do I do it in-house or go out to a consultant? If I do it in-house, about how much manpower is that going to take me? If I go out to a consultant, what's reasonable for a town of 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people to spend on the development of meeting year one standards here? Because the consultant comes in and says, well, it's going to cost you X or Y, and they don't know how to judge, is this overkill by the consultant? Or is this what I need to do, and is this the most efficient price for that? So I'm just trying to help, or figure out a way where we can get towns to know they are expending the right amount of money and doing this program as cost effectively as possible.
Yep, I completely agree with that. And we do, like on that tools website that I keep bringing up, there's a section on cost and compliance. And there's Excel spreadsheets for like different size towns. I just think they're broken into 3 different ones, and you put in catch basins, lane miles, the size of your town. There's a bunch of different things that you can put into these spreadsheets to try to spit out what your costs of creating these different plans would be, what your estimated costs would be for street sweeping if you own your own street sweeper, or if you're going to contract it out. Same thing for catch basin cleaning. If you're going to contract out your IDDE program, or you're doing it in-house, how many hours that's going to take. It walks you through a lot of that. So like we had a consultant make it, so we didn't make it. Trying to take ourselves out of the equation, because that's not my forte. But it is like, I've had some pretty good results with it from towns that have used it and said, yeah, that was actually pretty close. It was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be to what it was going to cost. So it's not perfect, but I think it's a pretty good tool. It's available, and it gives you at least a ballpark of man hours or cost.
I guess to refine that point a little bit, you were talking about sort of the actual work that many towns have been doing for years now, the street sweeping and the maintenance and all that kind of stuff. I was trying to hone in on the preparation of the plan for a community by an outside consultant is typically not going to come in and do that maintenance kind of stuff. But they are going to be asked to come in and prepare the paperwork that we need to give you. And that's what are we spending too much on that, or just the right amount?
I think there is a line item in there about what it should cost, for sure. There's a line item for everything. Yeah, and like we created the template in hopes that a lot of this would move in-house, so you like really take ownership of it. But we can't. That was the idea. So you didn't have to hire somebody. There was like a template out there that you could begin to fill in, but that's up to you. If you don't want to use it, you're going to hire somebody to make it. It's totally fine. But I think there's a line item in that tool that you can see.
I don't want to be a hound, but the metric, if we do all of the items that are on the checklist by June 30th, what is the metric that the EPA is going to use to determine if my community, Attapoiset, is contributing a good standard of effort in carrying out those items, which have some cost factor to them, and carrying out the issue of remediating our worst stormwater discharges? If I do a project a year in addition to complying with those, am I meeting the standard of effort, or do I have to do 3 or 4 of them?
I mean, so the permit compliance will be judged based on your annual report every year to make sure you're checking the boxes that you need to be checked. What you're talking about is like if you were to get audited, for instance, if someone were just to come down from the enforcement office and sit with you and see your level of effort and what you're doing, and if you're actually in compliance and where all your stuff is. And I don't know. I'm not in the enforcement office, and I don't know that. But for our office, what we're going to be looking at is at year 1, much before year 1, we're going to give you an annual report template that you're going to fill out. It's going to have when all the things were due, and you're going to need to say when you've done them, and they're going to have other little metrics on there, like how many illicits did you remove this year, how many did you find, and just so we can keep track of what's happening. But that's how we're going to, we want to see that you're doing the program. That's from my perspective. I want you to be doing the program. I want you to be doing the things when they're due on time, like you're doing them when they're due. You are doing your catch basins. You are sweeping your streets. You are removing illicits when you find them. You do have all your plans in place that your staff knows what they're doing. But we're as far as doing a retrofit project a year, there's no metric in there in the permit for that. So that's not something we're going to be judging you on. But I can't speak to any audit because I'm not interested in the enforcement office.
Thank you. Now, all the
stormwater and stuff like that, that you're doing the street sweeping and catch basin, it generates another waste as far as the solid waste factor. What's the solution to this, all the solid waste, all this stuff is generated? And is there a beneficial use for this, all this material that we're gaining now? And there seems to be less and less places taking it and trying to get rid of it is a problem to me, so.
Yeah, I mean, so in the permit, it's gotta be compliant with state law, and there's a state law that says, you know, solid waste from catch basin has to be landfilled unless you get a beneficial use determination. So that has to be in the permit. And so, like, we really need, if that changes though, like, we just say dispose in accordance with state guidelines, but if the state guidelines change for catch basin cleaning, then that you can get rid of it a different way, but until that changes at the state level, that's the way it is. I know that if Fred was here, he would say, like, you know, the best thing you can do is band together as towns and say to DEP that we want a beneficial use determination for our catch basin cleanings, and put pressure on them to change that, or to make that determination, or tell you how to get that determination. And I would also recommend that you do that, because you're not the only people that tell me that. Like, everywhere I go, they're like, well, we have to do this, we have to landfill all these. It's like, yes, but there's, in the state regs, there's another way you can get a beneficial use determination, can get a BUD, but you've gotta go through that process. And I'm hoping you can, like, go through it all together. Like, that would be the ideal. So, like, this group could get a BUD for the area. But that's something you guys should talk about and collectively think about.
You mentioned the audit process. Do you have a formalization of how you're gonna do the audit process? Is it like FEMA, where you're gonna do a 5-year audit? Is there, you trying to do a certain amount of towns? Is it by complaint? What's the?
It is by complaint sometimes, but I know that the enforcement office does that, but I'm not in that office, so, like, their pressure and metrics change every month, it seems. So I don't really know. I'm just lucky I'm not in that office, so I don't have to deal with it. And I don't know what their pressure will be next year, or what their metrics will look like.
Question? A lot of towns in the region have already done quite a bit to remediate, you know, outfalls, contaminated outfalls and whatnot. Is there some sort of a mechanism for giving credit for outfalls that we have already spent a lot of money on and remediated in the last 2 to 5 to 10 years? Is that something that is looked at?
Yeah.
Part of the program?
So, like, the IDDE program is where you're gonna be able to take credit for a lot of past work. And I know you guys in particular have been doing a lot of IDDE stuff.
Yeah.
And in the permit, it's written in that if you've done this program, which I know you guys have, that's in compliance with that permit, you get to take credit for it. You don't have to redo that work. You can just check that you've done all of those catchments on all of those outfalls, and then move forward. So, like, you have to like screen all your outfalls by year 3. I think most of you guys are all pretty close to done with a lot of your outfalls, and you just can check them off.
A lot of the work that the BBAC did.
Yes, exactly. And I know that was compliant with the permits, because I looked at it, so you can take credit for that. You don't have to redo it.
Yeah, good.
What happens if we don't comply?
Then you get put on the list. And,
That's a good question.
yeah, I know, like 3 years ago, I think 15 towns or so got hit with $60,000 fines. You just get hit.
Are the fines cheaper than the actual implementation?
Depends. I mean, whatever, I don't know what it is going now, but it used to be $16,000 per day per violation. So, depends how many violations they have. How many outfalls do you have? Multiply by 16,000. Multiply by the number of days.
And it puts a tremendous burden on the towns, tremendous burden on our town. We don't have the finances to do it, we don't have the resources to do it, we don't have the staff to do it. Even the notice of intent, you know, as we went through the process, and if I was to do another notice of intent, it would be fairly easy. First time through is difficult, and by the next time we have to do it, we're gonna forget what we did the first time. So it's, I just wanna stress that point.
Yeah, like, this is not, like, no regulatory program is painless, right? I mean, we're trying to solve a very large problem in the state, and it's going to take effort by everybody here. And we have been listening over the past 5-6 years, multiple drafts, everything, like trying to make it as easy as we could by still making the progress that we need to make under the Clean Water Act, and this is where we ended. And it is going to take effort, and it may change. It may take some change at a town level. It may take like different funding mechanisms. It may not in other towns, and it's just going to be a town by town thing. And nothing hard is easy.
Be helpful if you had a help desk too, if we could call on.
That's me.
It's to get through to somebody and then to get response. It's not a quick
Yeah.
turnaround.
No, I'm not a quick turnaround. I'm like I'm better at email.
Yeah.
I'm not a quick turnaround on the phone, but yeah, I really try. It's either me or Fred. Like both, if you email both of us, usually one of us will get back to you within 3 days.
You
So-
can also write or call Bernie and me, and we could try to help you out too.
Yeah, we try to be, especially if it's from a town, you're gonna get a response from either Fred or I within 3 days. If it's a consultant, you're gonna wait a little longer. But if it's a town, we're pretty responsive. I'd say. We at least try. But if you got an issue, email both of us. We'll get back to you.
I'm old enough to have been around when the Clean Water Act came out, and I specifically remember in the community that I was working in, under the Clean Water Act, the EPA picked up 75% of the cost of installing public sewer and sewer trunk lines, and the communities that went to the voters on the issue of betterments for sewer connections. I would just think that if you could take that to the powers to be at the EPA, if there were some discussion about doing something along those lines, I think your end objective would be better achieved in getting communities to participate with the EPA because some funding is provided by them in making better progress towards your end objective. You're not on the municipal side, but I think this gentleman makes a very good point in that it's extremely difficult to talk about another user fee. People are paying for water, sewer, electric, gas, all of those items, and like you said, put it in an enterprise. I wouldn't particularly want to be around in my community to start having that discussion. That may bode well for the Metro Boston area where they're paying crazy fees already. But to talk about another local fee and talk about overrides for capital improvements that we have to do, like in my community, we override every year for road improvements. And that's just to keep the roads, passable, much less improving the stormwater, which we do. We do whenever we can and have that opportunity, we improve the stormwater situation. But I think you need to bring a message back to the folks at EPA, and that's higher up. I understand your position and your responsibility, but there's gotta be some partnering.
I can't actually do that.
Run that by me again?
I can't actually do that.
And we'll take it to management, what you just said.
But we don't, at the upper management, at the highest upper management, at Andrew Wheeler, he doesn't set the budgets. Congress sets the budget. And we are only allowed to spend money on programs that we're appropriated to spend money on. And so,
Somebody brings that budget to Congress,
Right.
and it's the EPA, then I think our constituents in my community and all the Buzzards Bay communities need to have conversations with those entities. And if it means we go to Bill Keating
Right.
as the congressman for our district and have those conversations, but if there's a willingness on the side of the EPA, there's a willingness on the side of the community, you're gonna have success. If you shoulder it all on the community, we're gonna kick back, and we're gonna push on our end to, to have this as an unfunded mandate. It's a hard pill to swallow I think it's sad that we jeopardize the issue of a significant improvement in the environment, but we've got to come to some understanding and cooperation.
Okay.
If I had money to give you, I would happily give it to you.
I'm sure you would, because you're
I would
a
happily
very good supporter of this, but you gotta understand, I have to execute it on my end.
Mhm.
And going down to town meeting and say, oh, by the way, I need $100,000 to do these priorities, manage the program, when I only have about $500,000 in new revenue every year, and I've got all the other things that are going up far in excess of 2.5, health insurance, all of those items, it's difficult.
Well, just so we're all a little less nervous, there will be a little, during review, like A for effort in some of these cases, right? I mean, so I've talked to, about the illicit discharge and the sampling and stuff. You know, rain event sampling, you know, I know it's down the road, but we've already started to talk to labs, and they can only take in a certain amount of samples. You know, there's not that many labs around here that do all this, and it's a 24-hour turnaround. You know, my town, we're just starting to look at, you know, mapping catchment areas and things like that. And I just don't think that we will, you know, we'll have some of it done, and we'll be moving forward to it. But I just, you know, I think that as long as, you know, we're really trying, but I don't know that we're going to meet, you know, every single thing on these at the deadlines. So
I think you're gonna find, like, especially for the IDDE stuff, that you guys have done a lot of work. That, I mean, there's only so many out samples you're gonna be able to take per day anyway, just based on the manpower that you have.
right.
And that's actually why there's a 10-year schedule or 3-year schedule to do this, do the first part, and a 10-year schedule to do the rest. It's because we realize there's only a certain amount of outfalls you can actually physically get to per day. So, like, that shouldn't limit the lab, because that's just the amount, you can't get to enough samples. I don't think it would overwhelm a lab. Plus, you know, like the dry weather screening that's due in 3 years, like, I don't know how many, like, when you guys go and do your sampling, like, how many outfalls, that is percentage-wise, actually have flow, that a lot of them you're just gonna go, you're going to, you know, do your inspection, you're not gonna have any flow, you don't have to take a sample. So, I don't know if you guys have any, like, how many times do you go to a outfall and it's actually flowing? Is it like every time? Is it 10% of the time? Like,
It's pretty rare.
pretty rare.
I'm more, yeah, I mean, the IDD stuff is the, you know, that's the, but the rain event thing, we're gonna have flow, and you know, we're gonna have to do it between the hours of 8:30 and 2:30 in order to get to the lab. And, you know, I know my town and every other town's gonna be doing it year 3, probably, you know, although we do have some help from Buzzards Bay National Estuary Programs to get us started, but I do have concerns about meeting some of these timelines. We're certainly working hard, but
Yeah, and you don't have to sample every outfall in wet weather either. There's like caveats in the permit. So trying to limit the amount of times you actually have to take that wet weather sample, only when you
I think,
need to.
what it is everyone thinks that every outfall needs to be monitored, you know, during dry weather, and that majority of times that's not the case. There's no water flowing, you just move on to the next pipe. Part of the problem down here is there can be water flowing, but it's tidal water coming out of the pipe. So that does take time, because you're gonna have to check the conductivity or the salinity every time to make sure it's just tidal and not stormwater. So it is gonna take a little more time than the, you know, normal town in order to get the dry weather monitoring completed.
Just because you got like tidal backups into your system. I mean, but that, like, I would say, like, that's also a good thing to know, right? Like, that you do have all of these outfalls that may cause more flooding problems down the road because you've got tidal backup into them. Like, that's probably a good thing to know about your system as well. And just, that's all, like, a lot of this is effort, trying to just getting to know your system, and then you have some permit requirements along the way too. can't tell you not to comply with the permit.
Right, I know.
So, some of the communities here, have significant state highways that go through their community. And, I know for the community we have, it's probably one of the sources of the worst stormwater quality, discharge to Mattapoisett River and Tug Mill Brook. What are you doing relative to the folks at MassDOT so that we can sort of make some combined efforts to, do some stuff jointly with them?
Yeah, so MassDOT will be getting their own individual MS4 permit. So they're responsible for all their roadways and all their pipes. You don't have to, you're not responsible for what's coming out of the end of their pipes. Their permit will look a little different than the general permit, because it will just be more prescriptive and more tailored to their system, but we are working on an individual permit right now. That'll probably be out summertime, and everybody will have the opportunity to comment on it. There'll be a public comment period, and we might actually go around and do some information sessions so you can learn about it. Because I know it's a big issue for, especially down here, it seems, that a lot of issues are around the DOT. So they're getting their own permit, you'll have a chance to comment on it.
What about federal lands, Army Corps of Engineers, federal lands, do they have their own permit as well?
Yep, depending on the
Okay.
size of their, depending on the size of their system,
Yep.
or their base, they have their own permit.
Okay.
And they will have, under this general permit, sorry, so they will be, like, Joint Base Cape Cod, for instance. They have their own, two of the places on there have their own permit.
Okay.
Under this general permit, though, their own permit number under this general.
So everything they discharge to the canal, they'll be doing their own sampling and their own, okay.
You're not responsible for it.
Now, if a municipality is keeping good track of how much street sweepings it's taking from the entire town, would you expect them to itemize what's coming from the urbanized area?
No.
Okay.
Definitely not. We are looking for the metric based on how you're running your program, and we're not going to make you try to figure out.
So
from
the
the program.
same for catch basins
Yep.
too? That's good.
We realized it would be a useless task to try to figure that out.
How do we monitor testing? Who's responsible? I guess we have stormwater that comes from town property, basically goes into the highway department, comes back into town property. At what point are we responsible? At what point is the state highway responsible?
So, like, under the permits, or under the regulations, you're responsible for when your system connects to another system. So in that particular scenario, your compliance point is when it enters the DOT system. DOT then owns your water. That water comes back into your system. Their compliance point is at where it goes back into your system, and then you own the rest.
So we would have to test before the highway and after the highway?
You don't need to know when it goes in, but if it comes back out, you're really testing at the end of that outfall. You need to know you have an interconnection there, but you're really testing at the end of that outfall, because that's your discharge to the water. If you don't have that other, if you don't own that other end, you need to be testing for flow at that interconnection to that DOT system, if you don't own anything else.
So for DOT, their outfall would be where it interconnects prior to the town system?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so they would have to,
they need to test there, they will need to test there once they get their new permit, and make sure they're not discharging any like illicits to your system. And if they do, then they've gotta go find them and fix them.
has there been any look at private roads, or any consideration, maybe not even for this permit, but for the next permit? I mean, down in the Cape, we have a lot of private roads. So, it's a little unusual, but, some towns, 30–40% of their roads are private roads, as you move further down the Cape. Has there been any thought about, because these are all really old subdivisions, none of them are really subject to our subdivision regulations now, which are fairly good, meet the Massachusetts stormwater, but they, it was the Wild West when they were all put in, so.
Yeah, right now, we're not looking to like designate any of those places as needing permits. They're not part of your system, so you're not responsible for them underneath this permit. But also, that means they're not responsible for doing anything, because they're not permitted. They're a private entity. Right now, we're not thinking about designating them, and that's hard. Hopefully it's just like a town issue that you can try to work with, but we're not, I don't know if you want us to come in there and permit them. I don't know if that would be the best either.
Yeah.
Kind of leads into his situation, that inventory of town-owned BMPs. A lot of roads that have been accepted by the towns probably have no thought to the drainage and the end of the pipe and the BMP detention basin, whatever, associated with that. Probably very limited to no maintenance by the town. At the end of the pipe, they've accepted the road, do they accept?
You accept the road, and you're accepting that
So
infrastructure.
that should be part of their inventory as well.
Yeah, you own that pipe, and you're probably gonna wanna know what's coming into that pipe.
That's what I thought, I just
And I know,
get it clarified.
I know a lot of towns are actually trying to make sure that they have an easement to go and do maintenance on those, or require that there's like a fund to make sure that those things get maintained within that development. Because you're right, a lot of them are put in and forgotten about.
There's a lot of them older, probably no one ever gave it any thought, so apparently they're gonna have to start, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to hear, like your side of like where you've seen improvements in the past year and, kind of like as a whole, where you would kind of like to see, maybe individually specific things or just as a whole where you'd like to see the, the future be, so this next year coming up.
Ooh, that's fun.
Just a small.
Yeah.
You have to do it in 2 words.
I'm actually like over the past 5 years, I've been really like I don't know. It's been really great to see like the state coming together in coalitions across the state, in coalitions of towns working together to work on better stormwater management. And whether that's for the permit or not, there's different drivers in different places. And like 10 years ago, there was one stormwater coalition, and now there's like 8 across the state, and including 160 municipalities that are in them. And they're all coming together to try to like put funds together, lobby DEP for different things together. There's a statewide coalition that comes together to lobby DEP, all the coalitions coming together to share resources to make sure they're not duplicating things. It's really been really nice to see everybody coming together to try to solve this problem and taking it seriously, and it's been really great. And I think we're only moving in a better direction like every year as far as that goes, and it's really nice to see. The biggest improvements or the biggest like innovations I've seen is taking normal day-to-day DPW operations and like road maintenance or catch basin replacement and like culvert repair, and actually building in like little mini green infrastructure things into their system. So you're taking like you're replacing a catch basin, and you're replacing it with something that now removes phosphorus, nitrogen, and sediments. And then we have tools on our website. You can actually calculate how much pollution you're removing from your stormwater. And these tiny little things that are being put into place for, relatively little additional cost are really neat. It's like people are taking it seriously to try to have less and less of a discharge at the end of the pipe. And they're taking ownership at a very local, at the very town level. The yards are like creating their own, gravel to put into these perforated pipes between 2 catch basins to have leaching catch basins, but after the solids are removed. It's really really interesting. And I think like, 10 years down the road, I'd love to see like that implemented in a lot more places where you have like distributed green infrastructure, mini green infrastructure that, towns know how to maintain. So it's not like you have to over-engineer a big rain garden or something, or a big like green street. You can do these things, do small things that really make a difference for water quality, for a relatively cheap cost, if it starts to become something that's done as a routine, not as something that you have to over-engineer. And I think like that's the way in New England that stormwater management is going to eventually go. It's just going to take a long time to get there, but that's kind of how I see it. I don't get to wax philosophic like that very often, so that's nice.
Any other questions?
Getting back to Mass DOT, they have their own permit. That includes not only the Interstate 195, but also Route 6.
Yeah, it includes all state roads, all DOT
state
owned
roads.
roads. So they're gonna have their own illicit program, so when it goes through neighborhoods and stuff, they have to do illicit
That's
program.
a lot of outfalls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they have to,
Yep.
they are responsible for all of that. You're not.
When you talked about the coalitions, are there any in this area?
Yeah, there's a Southeast Stormwater Alliance. I forget the name of it, but there's one it's out of, there's one down here for sure. It's right, I forget, Southeast Watershed Alliance or something like that, or Southeast Watershed Coalition. I think there should be a list of all of them on our website right now, or a link to the list on DEP's website that you can see.
Are there any local towns in that alliance?
Yeah,
I mean, around here?
yeah,
Like,
I think so. Definitely, like Lakeville, I know, there's a bunch that are down here that are in it. And you can see, I wish I had the,
Well, I think that would be a good thing for the BBAC to become involved with.
That's what I was.
And so, we're already 13, communities here, and we have this existing organization. We're doing stormwater, so it sounds like the perfect sort of marriage. So I'm making a note here to contact them and maybe partner up with them, become part of a larger
it's
coalition.
a very good idea. And the Cape just actually created their own.
Yeah,
Same,
stormwater managers.
yep, same exact thing. They already had a coalition that came together, so they're just like, well, let's just make this a stormwater coalition, and then we can have a seat at the statewide one that they meet a couple times a year to lobby the DEP and the legislators.
Strength in numbers.
Exactly.
On the issue of the street sweepings that you discussed earlier and this, the study, have there been studies done, as far as you said, Massachusetts, we need to do some lobbying to get them to accept. What have other states done? Has it been acceptable to use as cover material, or alternative uses for that material?
In Mass, you can use the street sweepings for that. It's the catch basin cleanings that are the problem. So I'm not really sure about what other states are doing as far as catch basin cleanings. I know in New Hampshire, they also have to get rid of them, landfill them. But I think they're also working on that issue, trying to get, there's gotta be a way, like different areas or frequency of cleanings that you can get a beneficial use and use them as fill in other areas. And I know the state they know about this, they gets talked about a lot, but the more it gets talked about, the more something happens, the more you bring it up, the more you strengthen numbers, but.
I wonder if that's a role that another role that our organization could play, is being in the loop on that.
And like,
With all communities.
yeah, and if you decide to become your own stormwater coalition or partner with the Southeast one, yeah, then you get to go and like send a representative to that big statewide one and kind of figure out all of these different things that are going on around stormwater. And then it's a really good place, like, I try to go every meeting to that one just so I can give an update, but I also like to hear about like what are the tools that everybody's working on together to meet permit requirements that I can like share with everybody else when I come to things like this,
since you go to those, perhaps you could explain what other towns are doing to raise money, because finances are a real concern. We have limited resources. We could use a lot more resources than we have right now. The DPW is overstressed as it is. Just putting together this program is going to be expensive.
Yep.
Wasn't in the budget originally, and where's it going?
Yeah, I mean, you had multiple years, it's not like we sprung it on you.
Okay, you didn't answer my question. How are the other towns getting the money?
There's many different ways that the towns are getting the money. There is just, they're taking out of their general fund, they've started their own enterprise funds, there's another,
We don't have any general funds we can take it from. It's all used.
this isn't an optional program.
So in that case, I would advise anybody who's putting together a plan to consider the fact that when you or the federal government comes in and does an audit, they're gonna audit you to your plan. If you say you're gonna paint this room green, it better be green.
That's not actually true.
That's been my experience with the federal government.
For,
They look at what you said you were going to do, and if you do it, you're okay. If you didn't do it, you're in trouble.
so that was the case for the last permit, because the last permit was very general, and your plan became your own permit, and you were held to what was in your plan. And we made a very concerted effort this time to give clear regulatory, like, certainty to everybody underneath this permit. That if you followed the conditions in this permit, you knew that you were in compliance. So if you got an audit, you knew if you're following the permit, not what's in your plan, that then you were in compliance. And that is what they will be looking at this time.
They're not gonna be looking at your plan?
They will be looking at your plan, but they'll be looking at your plan to make sure you're meeting the permit requirements, not meeting what you put in your plan. And the permit requirements are much more specific than they were last time. Every minimum control measure has different metrics in it, and that's,
How do you meet those, and how do you meet those requirements? That's what you put in your plan. The plan is what you're going to be doing.
to meet the permit requirements,
Right.
but there is
Maybe-
no,
there may
there's
be a
nothing in
timeframe
there that says
involved.
to paint the room green. And we're not gonna fine you because you didn't paint the room green, because the permit doesn't say to paint your room green.
But the permit says you're going to go and inspect all of your outfalls. Well, what happens if you miss an outfall, or if you have to modify it?
Now, what happens if we're hit by asteroids? I just don't know. Like we're coming into like crazy hypothetical land, and what I really want to,
The thing that's not hypothetical is that every town involved, and Wareham is one of them, is going to have to be spending a lot more money and a lot more resources. And we don't have them. We're short right now. Not that we don't want to comply with, we all want fresh, clean water. We all really want that. We want to work towards it. But to expect it to happen overnight, it's not going to happen. We don't have the money to do it.
I think it's very similar to like the Wetlands Protection Act. You either do it or you face the consequences of it. And that's what the towns have to be prepared for. You know, there are fines and there are penalties. So it's gotta come from somewhere where there's no penalties, you know, and that's what I've talked to, you know, my town about is, this is a mandate. It's not, something that we can choose to do or not, so.
No, we have to do it, but we have to fund it. We have to get the money to hire the people to do the work. We don't have the money.
Is there any knowledge of at the state level whether the governor is looking to put money in that direction? He's done that in other areas, whether it be solar or energy efficiency. Any talk at that level, do you know?
I know they're coming out with, this year, MS4 assistance grants like they did last year. I'm not sure when the RFP's coming out for that, but they're funding that. They're doing that again this year. There are, you know, if there are state revolving fund loans, they're not grants, but you can use that for stormwater planning, so you can use that for permit compliance. Those are ways that other people are funding their programs. The state MS4 assistance is not that big, but it is something that it's now at least they've made an effort to like fund it in the last couple of years, and it's continuing to be funded, so it's on their radar, and this issue is on their radar. The state revolving fund, they just got, for the Clean Water Act, and the Clean Water Fund, just got, I think it was new last year, that you can use all those funds for stormwater planning and implementation. So before it used to be only like implementation things, now you can use it for actual planning, which is this, you know, you're planning for stormwater. So those are other options that people have used when to try to be like creative. And again, that's a loan, but it's a, you know, it's a low interest, very low interest loan that people are taking out to get them started.
Through the court case and mitigation, does it look like some of these mandates will be delayed or postponed, or is there any indication at this time?
No indication at this time.
Any indication on the timeline when they may?
I have no idea. Hopefully so.
Hey, Bernie, you got one more?
Yeah, it's fine.
The annual plan this year, what's it to entail? The permit you're working on, or the 2003 and what you're doing?
It's gonna be, so that the annual report is due September 30th this year. Next year, of 2019.
The May 15th or whatever deadline they
No.
want.
You do not have to do that. So your next annual report that's due in the end of September will encompass that little bit of time that you were covered under the 2003 and weren't covered under the 2016. You're gonna be talking about everything. So you don't have to submit 2 annual reports. That one annual report will cover that bigger time period.
Okay.
And we will have a template coming out to say what you need to be putting in that.
Those templates, I love them. Increased discharges, I know nobody's actually talking about that, the inventory of increased discharges. What does that involve exactly? It's in, I'm sorry.
Where is it?
It's in part 1.10.2. Following information included in your stormwater management plan within 1 year. The documentation of authorization of all new and increased discharges granted by Mass DEP in compliance with part 2.1.2.
Yep. So if you don't have any of those, then you don't have to include them. And it's going to be a DEP interpretation on and if you need discharge to certain waters that have increased loading to those waters based on actions that you've taken in your system. It's going to be a very rare instance.
So that'd be what, new roads and parking lots that are installed?
Yeah.
Impervious surfaces? Yeah.
And then it's only potentially
Okay.
that are going to need state review. And
When does that start though? Is there like from your 2003 permit? I mean,
no, it's from this permit on.
just this
yes.
permit? Okay. Let's see what other questions. What if, and I know this is picky, but there are a lot of discharges onto town roads that are not permitted.
Like private, like roof leaders?
Usually like an A&R lot, approval not required. Apparently though, they need some sort of permit, right? I mean, based on water quality standards, it's not like only when we find you may be causing a problem, then you have to come in after the fact. What you're saying is your bylaw should cover
Yeah.
pretty much everybody.
So your post-construction bylaw needs to be updated within 2 years of this permit. And it's got to include all new development and redevelopment, but the threshold in the permit is if it's disturbing over an acre of land, and that's, that can be rare. But that's minimum, so other towns have shrank that down, like a couple towns have like 350 square feet, But it's all depending on what you want to do for your town. So again, we're coming back to what do you want to do, what's best for stormwater management for your town. The permit makes you look at and control stormwater discharges that enter your system from all new and redevelopment if you're disturbing over an acre of land. And it's like, no matter what, it's because the best time to do stormwater controls is that during that newer redevelopment process, because that's the cheapest way to do it. And to make them, there's specific requirements in the permit, so they reduce phosphorus and sediment going into your system. And that's gonna make them actually control water better before it enters your system. Put in something besides just sheet flow onto your system.
So to expand on that a little bit, if you have a private, say a big parking lot, shopping center, whatever, it's not within the jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act, so there isn't any automatic kick-in for Mass DEP stormwater. But that, and it's redeveloped, and it's over an acre. If that particular development then discharges onto a town road, and an increased discharge onto a town road, the towns then become responsible for that increased discharge from a private development. How do we control that redevelopment and not have it impact the town's, permit?
Yeah, so like the permit actually is trying to, like, we're only talking about urbanized area, but if you take it, doing the best thing you can for your town, most people expand that to the jurisdictional area, and then the permit requires you to take the Mass Stormwater standards and apply them area-wide for all the permit coverage areas.
Could you say that again, please?
You take the stormwater, you need to update your stormwater bylaws by year 2 to expand the Massachusetts stormwater standards that are just in the Wetlands Protection Act right now to be applicable MS4 area-wide.
And if let's say, a zoning board of appeals waives the stormwater management, it's already in there. Let's say, just as a hypothetical, a ZBA, and there's no other town permit necessary, waives the stormwater management improvement, DEP stormwater managements, would that be considered a violation on the part of the town?
So there's another piece to the post-construction, which is expand the stormwater standards to MS4 wide, and ensure that all new development reduces sediment load, the annual sediment load by 90%, annual phosphorus load by 60%, and for redevelopment, make sure the annual load goes down 80% for sediment, 50% for phosphorus.
But no nexus to volume.
That doesn't. So we're relying on volume and peak rate control with the state stormwater standards.
Right. But if those standards are waived,
the pollution reduction standards still stand. And they need to still stand in whatever bylaws or whatever thing you pass. They cannot be waived.
Are you and Fred working together to get the Massachusetts stormwater standards to comply with, because your standards are more restrictive than the Massachusetts stormwater standards. Are you working on that, and when do you think, any idea on timeline for something like that?
I believe over the summer they're gonna convene the technical advisory committee to start looking at the handbook and updating the handbook. And there's a lot of things they wanna update, not just this. So they will be looking at the whole handbook gets opened up, then the technical advisory committee gets put in. But one of the drivers is to make sure that the standards in Massachusetts MS4 permit and the state stormwater standards actually mesh. So the idea being that you won't have to.
That the planning board's not more restrictive than the Conservation Commission.
That everybody is working off the same standards.
that's critical.
It is, and we've known this since we were drafting the permit that this was coming, and this is coming.
Any more questions? One more.
The mapping,
Yeah.
mapping the sub-catchment areas and basins and the outfalls, to what degree of accuracy are they looking at?
The outfalls need to be basically like cell phone accuracy. They can be up to like plus or minus like 30 feet. And then your catchment area delineation is like your based on where your catch basins are, and it's and like topographic maps, it's your best guess at it. There's no standard for the mapping. The mapping is really for you to get to know what water is coming into your system and from where. And it's really for you. So we don't put a standard of like plus or minus any feet on it. It's just where the outfall is, has that standard.
Okay. I think we're gonna have to call it quits here. We got more things
Beating
to,
up on Newton enough?
more things to do, and it looks like Mike slipped out when I wasn't looking. So,
We had his comment.
pardon me? Okay.
We had his comment.
Loud
We
and
want-
clear.
I want to
Thank you very
thank you, Newton, for the time and effort. I'm sure you'll probably hear from people
Email's the best way.
more frequently. Okay, next we have Bernie and Kevin. You had something that you want to go over?
I don't really have a presentation per se, but just want to let everybody know that we're continuing on the collaborative with Mass Maritime Academy. So we will be sampling mostly in Wareham, and we're starting 3 new towns: Westport, Marion, and
Excellent. Don't forget us, Bourne.
and then I didn't do a presentation today. I brought a map of the urbanized areas, and I brought this poster that kind of gives the entire watershed perspective broken down by town of where they are with EMS4, how many catch basins and discharges they have. So you can take a look at it and compare it's kind of a peer pressure thing to see how the other towns are doing to make everybody feel better, because Wareham has more discharges than everybody else.
Combined.
So that's all I have.
Kevin,
Any questions for him?
yeah, how, have you all received your final reports from the stormwater program at this point, that BBAC ran? Has everybody received their final reports? Are they available?
Yeah.
Question.
Joe is still working on it.
Joe's still working on it? Okay.
Well, he's sitting on it. Yeah, I don't think he's working on it. I'll remind him,
Okay, because I'd be interested to see,
But I think probably we could, if you're interested before, we can, actually, I've been encouraging us, but it's, we need to sit down and talk to individuals, usually like you and the DPW. I want you both together, and so it's just a little hard to set up, but we will do that with every single town, because some of the towns have got BMPs that are old, and I know they're failing. Lack of maintenance is probably the biggest issue, and so we need to start talking about what you need to do to either A, improve it, or B, start replacing, which usually involves, a grant or some other mechanism. So it's going to involve individuals. Another thing I wanted to mention, well, 2 things, is we do have a monitoring guidelines that should help with doing your IDDE procedures. It's on the Buzzards Bay NEP website, but I'll send you all a link. So I think that should at least eliminate that particular component. I am going to be revising it. Every time we go through a monitoring season, there are things I need to change, but I think it follows along what EPA requires. And the only other thing I really, really, really want to stress is I know a lot of you are hiring someone to do your stormwater management plan. Do not just have someone else write it for you, and then the deadline comes up, and then you look at it. That's such a bad precedent. You are going to be living with this for the next 5 to 10 years. You need to be involved in writing it. You just can't ignore it and hopefully in 6 months it'll go away, because it's not going to happen. So it's not just the DPW. It's not just their responsibility. Board of Health, Planning Board, Concom, Town Manager, you all have a part of it. Unfortunately, the DPWs are going to feel the brunt of it, and I know that, and we are definitely here to help in any way. Anything you need, you can't figure out, just got to call, whatever, okay?
Thank you. Any other questions for him? Moving on, treasurer's report.
Oh, okay. So I didn't make you guys copies. I don't have a copy machine at my disposal these days. But I started at Halloween, and we had $10,224.10. We paid the IRS
Let the crowd.
3 times since then.
Oh, we're getting on with the rest of our meeting, so
Oh,
if everybody is here for just the MS4, you do not have to stick around, I'm sorry.
Boring stuff if you want.
I'm a little slow, not practiced.
lot staying.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So we paid the IRS, let's see, 76.51, 153.04, and 191.30. And we paid Mass DOR, geez, I only have it done once. It must have, we must have paid at the end of October and on the 17th of December. So they only got $37.30 this time. And then we paid Liz every week. And we had 2 deposits, 2 assessments deposited. So we are ending up with $11,514.08.
What was it, 11,000 what?
$11,514.08.
Thank you.
Make a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
All in favor?
I've got, yeah,
Go.
Nick, you got, oh, for coffee.
coffee. And, do we want to talk about the insurance now?
Oh, you might as well.
Yeah.
So I talked to, what is it, Silva Insurance, that $518 bill for workman's comp, that was all the field personnel. For just me, it's like $50, and I'd encourage you not to bother, because I'm not gonna be doing very much. I mean, if I go out and start sampling for you, that's one thing, but it's workman's comp, and I've got my own insurance, so if you wanna save yourself $50, but it's up to you.
Just my thought on that, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in the office too.
Yeah, really.
You know, lifting a box or using scissors or anything, I mean,
I don't run with scissors.
no, I know, but when we were, you know, when I worked,
Well,
when I worked on the private side,
all right, I might drop something on you.
when I worked on the private side, we all thought that it was the stuff in the off, you know, in the field that, but it was really people, you know, the carpal tunnel and there's a lot of the other things that really
Drop
had
a
the.
cooler on your toe.
So for $50, I mean,
I agree.
So I can hurt myself now, okay.
yeah, now you can start running with the scissors.
And the director's liability is $773 per year. And I'm ready to rewrite this, but I'm gonna need Marilee's help with it. And, you know, like all the directors, you know, the president, you know, vice president, so on and so forth, that's all changed, so, and somewhere here, someone has to sign for it. It was Jeff Osuch last time, but I'm assuming it'd be either Mike or Norm that would do it this time?
Yeah, it would be Mike, probably.
Mike, okay.
Mike or Norm, yeah.
All right, I better get him fast then, 'cause I think he's gonna disappear.
Well, you know how to catch him.
Well, I don't know, I think we're having a party later today, so I'll nab him.
Do we ever look at like a year to year, Marilee, like, you know, where were we last year compared to where we are
It's
now?
the same amount.
It's the same, we're about the same amount?
You mean
For the-
total dollar
for-
amount?
Yeah, in terms of,
For just the director's insurance, yeah.
No,
no, but I'm
he's
talking about just general budget, or, you know, we were pretty tight at the end of last year, but I know that a lot of that was the stormwater, but it'd be interesting to see, you know, if we do, like, over the past 3 years, I'm sure you have it stored somewhere in the.
Well, I do and I don't. Cordero took the check register from me when we first started using him, and he's never given it back.
Okay.
So you know, I don't know.
What's he need to keep it for?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't know.
Ask him to get it back if you need it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
We should
you
be
can copy
doing
it if he
better.
wants.
Yeah.
We should be.
A spreadsheet or something, so you might be able to just.
It would be interesting to know where we are now compared to where we are last year, and, you know, that would kind of give us an idea whether we need to increase funds or whether we can do something additionally that we didn't do last year, you know, in terms of educational outreach, or?
The only thing is that Gosnell doesn't appear to be paying their assessment anymore. So, you know, we're doing better for the 11, but,
Should we,
you know, we're taking,
eventually we should probably vote whether
Well,
that's all there's a,
maybe we ought to send them a letter asking them
whether
what
they're
their intentions
interested.
are.
yeah.
Why don't you draft something up? You know,
Our
say-
only contact was Ray Pickles, so,
Well,
but,
Send it to Seth Garfield.
we'll send it out there and let them figure it
yeah,
out.
but poor Seth is, I just,
Seth gets bombarded by everything. in
I know,
Gosnell.
and he never even volunteered for anything, so, I mean, as far as I know, he just does, you know, aquaculture out there. And I just bumped into him at a conference and just
Yeah, I see.
grabbed him.
Draft up a letter we can send to them,
All right,
and,
Ask for his help,
all right.
or we won't eat his oysters.
Am I putting that in there? All right,
No.
all right.
So going towards Sam's point, do you think we have, with the assessments that have come in and what we project for salaries and normal monthly payments, enough to continue to pay for the insurance, which I think is a good thing? Do we have enough for that?
Hadn't we decided that we were gonna go with the insurance, right? The director's insurance, yeah.
yeah.
We have
We're
it
okay
covered.
budget-wise on that?
Hope so. Yeah. How much is it? $773. It's due by January 1st, so,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
we
have
better.
it now, no doubt about it, but I haven't looked.
All right.
I think we should go, we should
To
do it.
continue.
Yeah, I think you guys voted that last meeting, but,
We can drop coolers on our toes.
no, you just can't drop them on anybody else's toes.
Anybody else's toes.
Anything else, Liz?
No, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Barely? Anything else?
Nope, I'm all set.
Okay. Director's report.
You just heard it.
CZM?
Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program, RFR, will be coming out in January, is what I've been assured. That is for both the MVP planning grants and MVP action grants. From the planning perspective, Buzzards Bay is in pretty good shape. I'm trying to think, I think there's Dartmouth needs a planning grant to go through that. Vinny, has Fairhaven done the planning grant yet?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Acushnet, I don't think so. Warren?
We have the grant, we just gotta get, gotta get
There's one
going.
last year's hanging around, so I think you guys are probably the four that still need to get it done, and everybody in Buzzards Bay would have the planning grant done. I would encourage you to move forward with that, because that really is becoming a gatekeeper for, it is a gatekeeper for the future action grants, MVP action grants, and it's becoming a gatekeeper for CZM's coastal resilience grants too. So it's a piece of cake. Just,
Yeah.
if you're not there yet, ask for the planning money. It's a 1 or 2 day workshop.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, you know, it's a good thing, and as I said, a gatekeeper. So that's the situation on MVP. CZM's Coastal Resilience Grant Program, the RFR, will probably be coming out sometime late February, March, or whatever. The typical cycle, I think this is our 6th or 7th year now. Start thinking about those projects. We have certain towns in Buzzards Bay that have really benefited tremendously financially by sticking with these things every year, and they've gotten a lot of grants, a lot of grant money. I guess if you would like, next, maybe, I don't know what your schedule is for the January meeting, but if you want, I can come to the January meeting and refresh the board of directors here, sort of what coastal resilience grants have been awarded in the Buzzards Bay area over the last 4 or 5 years, so you can think, well, geez, we could benefit from a similar kind of grant or not. Just sort of run through the basics. So here's the kind of grants that have been awarded. Here's maybe a few examples outside of Buzzards Bay. At this point, there's probably, I don't know, there's dozens, 50, 70 projects or whatever over the years that have been awarded statewide. So I won't try to cover them all, but I just try to pick out a few to get you thinking. And if we talk of a few, if I present that next meeting, that'll give you time to think about it a little bit and come to talk to me before the RFR comes out in March, somewhere February, March. This
Dave, has CZM ever thought about changing the scheduling of the grant process? You know, you work with almost all coastal communities, and coastal communities, our timelines are, you know, by April, May, we're gearing up for the summer, you know, so it's really, you know, January, February, March that we can think about things and maybe do some of these, you know, applications for grants. By the time you get into May and June, it's, you know, it's nearly impossible, and our population has doubled, and we're just, you know, dealing with.
That would be great. But we don't know how much money we're gonna
Right,
get for
yeah.
work until,
Right, yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
January, February, then we gotta go through the
Yeah.
process. It's not an ideal situation, because when we go through the process, you know, we send it out, the RFRs come in, we make our decisions, typically sometime in the summertime, in the early fall, we try to write contracts. Towns have to get those projects done by June 30th, so they're given 6, 7, maybe 8 months, 9 months at the best to get those done, but that's just the way it works, and if you know the governor well, you know, we agree with you.
Okay.
But there's nothing that we can do about it, really.
But there's really nothing preventing planning at this point.
No,
I mean,
if
you
you
can
guys have
plan
ideas
for
now.
these ideas, even if you haven't done the municipal preparedness, you can still plan for it
I'll be happy
and have
to
it
come by
ready
the
to go when, you know, when the grant program comes
And
out.
most of the time, the RFP or RFR changes minimally from one
Right.
year to the
Yeah.
next. The number may change, you know, maybe one year, your max grant is 250,000, well, maybe this year it's gonna be 300,000, you know, so we'll change things like that, but generally, in the last few years, we take last year's RFR and say, well, what do we need to change? And it's a word here, it's a phrase there, boom, 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 it's out the door. So if you wanna get started now, just take last year's RFR and think, what do I wanna do? How do I craft it to fit this RFR? Ask Dave to come over, and I'll give you the words to put in there, you know, to help you maximize your chances. And then when the RFR comes out, then if you ask me then, you know, the rules.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't do anything. So, that's it. As far as if you want me to come next meeting with this, just a summary, I don't think
Yep.
it should take 20 minutes to just give you a graphic or two and answer a
Okay.
few questions.
Yeah, that'd be
That's
good.
Yeah, we don't have
Especially if
anything else scheduled, do we?
No.
Sounds like you're on.
Yeah, especially if you can give us what you guys are looking for in terms of projects. You know, if there's a general scope that you're really trying to achieve.
Thank you. BBNEP, anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Okay.
Heard enough from us already.
EPA,
I have nothing.
okay.
I am interested in the waters of the U.S. definition, so if you could keep us updated of any changes going forward.
Sure.
Any old,
You know what the impacts of that are gonna be, you know, on
Oh, we all wanna
policy.
know.
Yeah, everybody.
I mean,
Just
just
like,
everything.
boom. I don't know.
It's huge.
yeah.
It's huge.
We ought to take a look at how that might affect us within our watersheds. You know, I mean, we have the Wetlands Protection Act, so, you know, so we're fairly covered, but, you know, there's potential that there are wetlands out there that are not gonna be covered at all,
Right.
especially out west, oh my God.
Yeah, they said, what, 50% of wetlands and 18% of streams are no longer to be covered under the changing definition.
Okay. Any old business? You have something you can bring up?
No, I'm new.
Okay.
I'm waiting for new.
Huh?
I'm waiting for new.
Okay, new business then.
So, the letter that, you know, we were talking about what Mike Gagne just said about contacting Senator Keating. Do we want to draft a letter on behalf of BBAC to have signed at the next meeting in support, or no? Yeah?
I
Sure.
think we should. Yeah.
Okay. And,
Give us money.
right, we want money.
Unfunded mandates are not popular.
All right, and we were looking at who is the Stormwater Collaborative for this area.
That we were gonna join?
It's us.
It's
We're
us?
on the Mass Rivers website,
Yeah.
is the collaborative.
Well, I
So,
think that was
Our
your
project.
previous.
That was a previous
Yeah, the
project,
previous
yeah.
project.
But
Well,
it's
we're
living,
still
it's living
there.
on, it's living on.
I think it's a good idea anyway, I think,
could
you know.
join
like-
ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, to get as many towns as possible, it's, you know, I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
it's-
the focus since I've been here has been completely on stormwater anyway. I mean, because it's been such a huge topic.
Yeah.
That maybe I mean, I don't know if we have a charter that we'd have to change to,
I have no idea. I haven't been around long enough.
Within the CCMP.
Yeah, it's a CCMP, yeah.
It's a mission, so.
Yeah, we don't have a charter.
I don't think we
Okay.
have to change it.
Right, CCMP has been reauthorized.
But the question is, just listening to all the talk today, could we be doing more from a lobbying standpoint?
Right.
Playing more of a role?
You want to put that on the next agenda too?
Sure. People could provide some comments or ideas at a time.
Okay.
Marty, what do you think? I mean, is there something you think that the communities can be doing above and beyond as far as their own individual permits, but to make things better or easier for the plans, looking at the cover material, looking at, is there something else you think we could be doing? To
Just-
affect change other than lobbying for more money?
some of the things we're doing on Cape are pretty simple, like you know, when you're talking about the O&M plans, you're just saying, all right, here's my O&M plan, how does it compare to yours? You know, are we all on the same page, and if we all go down, are we all going down together? You know, the stormwater sampling program, which I think we're gonna steal significantly from Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program, you know, we just wanna be able to, we all wanna adopt the same things, so that you know, all the towns are working off, and then all our data is comparable. So there's a lot of discussion just about that sort of thing.
There seems like there should be an opportunity for sharing information. For example, if somebody finds a great deal of, you know, a bargain place where they can get rid of their catch basin sweepings and so on, to share that, or if you can come up with a collaborative to come up with solutions for that would have a huge payoff.
Would it be useful for the group to know how everybody else is attacking these problems? Like, how many towns are doing it on their own? What staff have they dedicated to it? How many towns are going with a consultant? Who's the consultant? How much are they paying for the consultant? Because somebody might be paying 25 grand and getting the product, and somebody else is paying 150 grand and getting the product. And for me, if I was at a town, it would be a revelation. It's like, oh, we're getting a great deal, or we're getting a horrible deal. And so you guys can help make wiser decisions and you know, be most, as I mentioned earlier, try to be as most cost effective as possible as you move forward with this. And maybe for the towns that are doing it on their own, you end up saying, well, let me just give me the half, you know, the stuff I can steal from you, I'll just take it and give it to my guy and he can use it. And for the towns that are picking consultants, I haven't heard of a single town to say, you know, I think most towns say, well, we'll just go with the consultant we know. It would be interesting for a town or somebody to put out an RFR and invite a dozen consultants or 5 consultants to bid on this.
We did.
You did?
We did an RFQ, but we did. And at that time, we put it out to 6 consultants. Only one answered.
That's good to know.
But also the Cape Cod managers, we just put out another bid. So we have a consultant under an EPA grant, and we also have individual towns all have or a lot of the towns have consultants. So we are looking into that, and I certainly could bring that to the, you know, to the group as well. So.
Do you have, so you're part of the Cape Cod Stormwater
Yes,
Collaborative?
yep.
Can you get somebody or yourself come and speak about how your collaborative works so that maybe we can mimic it?
Yeah, maybe we should have Joanne Morimoto come in and discuss it. She's she's sort of the brains behind our operation. So
She talked to us about a stormwater utility at one point.
yeah, she did.
It wasn't very well received.
No, she's Cape Cod Commission, and they've been pushing that at our level, and there's no appetite for it. I think even Yarmouth looked into it at one time and couldn't even touch it with a 10-foot pole. It doesn't mean that in 10 years it won't be an issue, but there's no appetite for anybody in the southeast that I've heard residential. You know, so far it's been cities.
That wasn't one of our more pleasant meetings.
No.
think it would be nice, though, to hear from other towns how, rather than, somebody else, another town person, how it's working for them and what they're finding helpful about joining
Yeah,
this
it's very similar to
collaborative.
this, more questions and answers. What we also, it's unusual in Cape Cod that we have such a big county presence. So we are utilizing the county lab for some sampling. So it's really about how we can all coordinate together. And they do have some permits, they have gone for some grants, and Joanne's been the lead for that. So yeah, let me think about it. Let me get past Christmas and my 2 little kids, and then I'll double check, and maybe it's something we can plan early on in season. Either I'll try and work with Joanne to get some updates on what we're doing, or she can come in and really.
Maybe for
But-
February?
Yeah, I was gonna say potential February.
Let's do that for February.
Yeah, okay, I'll speak to her.
Okay.
And let me look into the other groups that are around and see if anyone would come and speak.
That'd be great, yeah. Okay.
And potentially even partner up, strengthen numbers.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for, if we want to release documents, I mean, Bourne has, but if we want to, create a draft template for our representatives, and then Cape Cod can review that, and they can determine whether they want to, get on board with that. It's all the same issues, believe me.
Well, maybe even the letter that we're gonna be bringing
Yeah.
to the board, it would be good if they were also involved in, in signing that letter. If it came from 2 large regional organizations, it carries even more.
Yep, so that's,
weight, so.
yeah, so we meet generally monthly. I think our next meeting is in January, so if you have something for me to bring to them, I'd certainly do so.
The letter that you're talking
Yeah,
about?
the letter,
Okay.
we're asking for money.
Yeah, I'm across Buzzards Bay on both sides, so I attend a lot of meetings.
You're the only guy who comes off the Cape, I think.
What's that?
You're the only guy who
Yep.
comes off the Cape.
Well, there's Falmouth too, but.
Yeah, but that,
Hasn't been here a while.
yeah,
don't know-
you could
yeah.
say that.
I don't know that Falmouth has a regular
They
attendance
still
at
pay
the.
you.
It's fine.
Yeah, right. The bridge trolls get them.
Anything else, Liz? Anybody else?
I'm assuming that January meeting will,
Well, I was gonna get to, is the next.
where?
The
Yeah.
next meeting's on, you mean where? Is that your question?
Saying where?
Back in the basement?
Yeah. Let me go see if they're still staining shingles.
You have to get by Sean first, yeah.
Pardon me?
You're gonna have to get by Sean first.
Yeah, that's what I said. I go see if they're
Yeah.
still staining shingles there or not.
All right.
You can always meet in Dartmouth, but nobody wants to come to Dartmouth.
Well, I mean, there's also another option of the police station,
I could do the police station
if
again.
it's available. So we can find a spot and let
All
everybody
right, so
know,
to be announced?
yeah.
All right.
And this room could be available.
24th.
Oh, that's
I know
good, yeah.
it's just not maybe suitable for everybody, but this certainly will be available again.
Just don't make me haul more of this stuff up those stairs again.
Use the
Okay.
elevator.
There's the elevator.
So,
Yeah, I didn't find that till the end, thank you.
I can never find my way around this building.
Motion to
I don't know
dismiss?
why.
It's crazy.
okay, I've got a motion to adjourn.
Wait, who made it? Wait, who? Okay, Sam.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy
Yeah.
holidays.
Put a donut in your pocket before you leave.
I'll lighten the load.
They're really